Access granted.
Hi everyone, welcome back to SwitchUp and to our 12 Days of SwitchUp series, where we're having a different video each and every day for 12 days before Christmas.
Absolutely right. If my maths is correct, this should be day 10 of the 12 days. And this one is one of Mark's series that he does throughout the year, and he's going to kind of culminate it in this series today, where he's going to look at some of the best games that were patched up. Am I correct in saying that? Or the best patches, the best work done?
Yeah, basically the best work done, you know, the best like post-release support.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean it was launched and it was a turd, but they have certainly polished whatever they had. Can I say turd in a Christmas video?
You said it twice now, so you might as well. Chuck another one in, why not?
Turd. That's the third one. Come on.
Good man, I like that. Very
you.
droll, very droll.
Remember, our sponsor of this series is Untold Tales, the absolute legends. They've got their 90% off sale at the moment. You can save a load of bunts, and there'll be information about that in the description.
Absolutely. So which were the best patched games of 2023? Well, let's find out.
As you know, Untold Tales have sponsored the 12 Days of SwitchUp with their huge 90% sale. Today's feature game is one I actually spoke about a few days back, and it's Everdream Valley. Now, I think it was maybe it was the cow milking game. The sheer hilarity of it meant that we had to talk about this one a second time. Now, if you like Stardew Valley or other farming sims, this is a 3D farming sim where you can create your own character, build up your farm. You've got complete freedom to go wherever you want. And it has elements from a lot of the classics, things like Stardew, Animal Crossing. There are some mini games in here for things like cooking and milking the cow. And we did do a full video on this one that I think highlights its best features. Now, since it came out, it's also had a number of patches, and it runs significantly better than it did at launch. If you're a fan of this genre, and let's be honest, there's been a lot in this genre over the last 12 months, this one's super relaxing, easy to get into, and it's just $11.24 in the sale. We'll pop links to our sponsored video that we did, as well as all the information about the sale in the description and the top pinned comment. But thanks to Untold Tales for sponsoring the 12 Days of SwitchUp. It has undoubtedly been a patch-heavy year for many developers trying to improve products that released in less than perfect shape. However, there are also those developers that go the extra mile after launch to try and make sure things really do live up to the expectations, and even going further than that and improving the base games that were already good. We're gonna celebrate some of those. We will also review some other patches that have recently come out, especially to big names such as Mortal Kombat 1 and Hogwarts Legacy. So earlier in the year, we had Tears of the Kingdom, which took the world by storm, but it did have a number of performance issues and other duping issues, in air quotes, that Nintendo were fighting very hard to repair. Now, it's seen a number of patches since it came out, and while some of those did seem to improve minor aspects of the performance, Nintendo's focus seemed primarily on fixing the dupes. It's not to say they didn't improve some of the bugs, but most people had an issue when using any tools that manipulated the physics. They'd see a drop down to 20 FPS, and there was a hard lock. It would move from 30 to 20 and then back up again. It was also shown by legends such as MVG that if you overclock the Switch, you could actually fix that quite easily, and in fact you didn't even really need to overclock it hugely, just a slight memory bump. But alas, they didn't see fit to do that. Instead, they spent a lot of time chasing after those duping glitches. Still, I think Tears of the Kingdom is incredibly impressive with the way that they did get it running, and it's a testament that really developers are the key factor when it comes to the Nintendo Switch, at least up to a point. Borderlands 3 also released this year, and it was running at 60 frames per second in the early areas, which kind of blew my mind. However, in the later stages, I did see a lot of crashing and other issues. It came out around about a month ago, and it slightly tweaks some of the visual aspects. They've still got missing textures, and you'll see lighting effects that, well, you won't see. And I did still see one of my biggest issues with the base game, which was there's a sound issue whereby some enemies sound like they're right up in your ear, even when they're on the other side of the level. But some of the crashes in the late game have been fixed. However, and we've seen this happen a few times, they've actually introduced a number of issues. The biggest of these, and one you should definitely watch out for, especially if you're someone that's maybe left the game for a while and are coming back after the patch, some people have experienced an inventory wipe, which is a huge thing in a game that focuses on what you can gather up and collect. A more minor issue that seems to have surfaced is some maps being wiped from your memory as if you'd never visited, but I will say this doesn't affect everyone. For your average player, they're probably not going to notice anything and might actually see some slight performance improvements. Still, that frame rate is fluctuating quite a lot. However, it tends not to go below 30, living around 40 to 50, which is very impressive. Mineko's Night Market was a game I loved when it released. I knew that not everyone would, but for me it just had such a relaxing vibe. But it did have some performance issues when you were loading in and out of your house, and also there were some sound glitches. Now there have been 2 patches since I reviewed the game, and while the performance is slightly better, so the general performance seems to be 60 FPS now, which is much better when you're moving around the world, the loading transitions when leaving your house are still a little long. They're nothing old Mortal Kombat 1 long, but yeah, they are certainly up there. There were also some other glitches when using the crafting mechanics in the house. That has been massively improved. It would hang for a long time, and yeah, it made things really quite frustrating, so that's probably the biggest and best fix there. Now earlier in the year we saw Alan Wake. Since then many of us have completed Alan Wake 2 and absolutely loved it, but Alan Wake released on the Switch and it was absolutely shocking. It looked like you'd filled both eyes with Vaseline and then pressed your face against a CRTV. There was one patch that came early that did bugger all, and then there was another one which did a lot. The second patch completely fixed the frame rate. It locked it out completely at 30 FPS, which was great. The image quality, well, it still looks like Alan Wake on Switch, but I think for a lot of Switch players, we are all about performance, and if it performs okay, we're kind of used to things not looking the best. And plus in Alan Wake, it's so dark, it almost gets away with the blurrier image quality. The game's still very fun to play, and now that it's running well, yeah, it's one of the wins of the year for sure. A random one was we received a large patch for Nier Automata just before the halfway mark in the year, and there were a number of improvements there. They fixed a load of bugs, they improved the performance across the game, and I described it as Nierly Perferct, which I think is very fitting. It's a cracking game, and if you've not tried it, it's now even better than it was when it first came out, and it was already quite good when it launched on Switch. As you can see, they did quite a lot to improve things. Red Dead Redemption was another port that came out on Switch this year, and everyone was bashing it, saying how bad it was going to be at launch, just because they hadn't actually remastered the game in any real way other than resolution. But realistically, what we have is a cracking version on Switch that runs really well. They've had a couple more patches since it came out because some bugs did emerge later in the game, and while there are still a couple of minor ones, I think for the vast majority of players, you're going to really enjoy your experience here. It's been nice to see some people playing this for the first time on Switch and just saying, my goodness, how did I miss this one? Then, standing in the corner of my room, swaying, waiting for a fatality, it's Mortal Kombat 1. Now, you probably have seen some of the videos I've done on this since it came out, and it was a bit embarrassing in certain areas, but really, the one that really stood out for me was the loading. I don't care if there's a few bugs and glitches, as long as they're not completely game breaking. It was running reasonably well, trying to hit its 60 frames per second target. We had a few issues, well, more than a few issues with different moves from characters, different effects not triggering correctly, but the loading was astronomically bad. I once sat for 5 minutes and then the game crashed. I rebooted, it loaded for another 2 minutes, and then it crashed again. I was like, oh, this is not worth it. Now, I've booted this up without a huge amount of expectations. This load transition before took me 60 to 90 seconds. Let's see how it does. And that is a huge improvement. The first fight took 24 seconds to load in. The second fight took 14 seconds to load in. I'm not entirely sure what types of jiggery pokery they've been up to behind the scenes, but actually with reasonable loading times that we've got now, as long as you can overlook some glitching, and you'll still see that, and you're not someone that particularly cares about visuals, Mortal Kombat 1 is actually playable on Switch now. It can be a reasonably enjoyable experience, which for those waiting for maybe a Christmas gift from, I don't know, it wouldn't be Santa Claus delivering Mortal Kombat, would it? But maybe Raiden or something. I would actually say that this is usable now. I couldn't play it before because those load times were just stupid. They have also added in Christmas updates. There's a seasonal update that adds a new arena with a seasonal style, and there's also the new season which has begun and has that winter theme. Other loading is still the same, so when you're transitioning between characters on screen to select your player, it still takes about 4 or 5 seconds, but overall a massive improvement on those load times. So if you're planning on getting it at Christmas, you can feel a little bit more relaxed. Last but not least, and probably one of the most impressive ports we had this year, it's Hogwarts Legacy, which has its 1.0.2 patch, and it brings with it a number of improvements and some things which still show that it's running on the Nintendo Switch. Now firstly, for the improvements, some of the frame rates are ever so slightly higher, and it actually, if I look at the interior of the castle, that's much better. It runs better than it did before. There's no doubt about it. The exterior, well, I don't know whether it was rose tinted glasses when it first came out or if things have slightly degraded, but in my testing here I had some significant frame hitching, so the frame pacing was all over the place and I don't remember it being that bad. Load times remain similar. You've still got the same load transitions. They haven't managed to magic their way out of that one, and while we do have a lot of people saying, oh, it runs better on the Switch than it does on name X platform. X platform tends to have the ability to just go anywhere, so you don't have to load between these different areas. There have been some improvements to the hair in the game as well, so I wound my daughter up and gave her this this haircut. She was raging in the background. But I did also experience one crash in my testing this time around, which I've never had before. So yeah, they're still working on it. It's seen some improvements in some of the frame rates in certain areas, but I would say it still needs a little bit of TLC, but I've got all the time in the world for those that get good praise, which I think they did do at launch, and then carry on trying to patch it. I know I said it was the end of the video, but then I got to the end and thought, what on earth have I done? I've not included Hello Games with No Man's Sky. Now I'm sure you're aware they've patched this so many times since it came out, and most recently they added the FSR 2.0 update, which significantly improved the visuals while also improving performance. It isn't perfect. There are still times where you can crash it, particularly if you build a load of stuff with the base building mechanics. But compared to what it was when it came out, it's so much better. There is still work to be done. The Switch does tend to have to wait a little while when new updates come out, but they've also added in loads of new single player content, new assets, new building objects, and new areas to visit. It's great. It's so impressive. So yeah, this has got to go in its rightful spot, I think, at the end of this list. Now I hope you have enjoyed All Patched Up this year. In 2024 we are likely, let's be honest, to see some hardware changes, or at least some information about what's coming next. And as a channel we'll be just moving over to whatever comes next for Nintendo. And these types of videos I think will actually become more important, as let's face it, Nintendo aren't going to be bumping their hardware up to PS5 or Xbox One X or Series X levels. So developers I think will still have their work cut out for them, and it might make for some really interesting content. Still, I hope you've enjoyed All Patched Up as much as I have enjoyed making it this year, and yeah, have a very Merry Christmas.
So there you have it. Hopefully you've seen a load of games that were released in a state and then gradually improved, and we revisited them, and I think we were one of the only channels to do that. So hopefully you enjoy that style. Let us know what was the game that you kind of went to after we revisited it. And as Glenn said in the previous video, we are giving away a Switch OLED. Make sure you comment on each and every video, you said, didn't you?
Yeah, for sure. And just going back to what you said about, obviously, about the patch.
Yeah.
Just to give a mention to the devs that do it.
Exactly.
I mean, because as you said at the start, all jokes aside, it's not necessarily about the game being a state. It's just about some devs wanting to go above and beyond and keep adding to their game, you know, so fair play for that. As we said at the start as well, obviously, we do have Untold Tales sponsoring this series, and they do have a big sale on at the minute on the eShop, so please do feel free to have a look at some of their games. We've got eShop credit available on our website, switchup.gg. You'll get yourself 5% back in cashback on our SwitchUp tokens, and another 5% straight discount if you use the code SwitchUp. So yeah, all adds up to a nice little bit of saving.
Lovely stuff. Thanks so much to our Patreons and our members, and as always, for all things Switch all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya!
And that was 20 odd years ago.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
I'm having an existential crisis. That's a good word, that.
It is a good word.
Yeah.
It's not a good feeling, but it's a good word.
No. I don't have those, to be fair.
Good. That's weird. Thanks for the life update. He does not have existential crises. At all. Ever.
Ever.
No. Just don't exist in his world. He's walking on sunshine.
That's a good song.
That's a good song.
Can you just like fade that in a little bit? Yeah. All right.
Right.
Look at that. Oh yeah.
I can't even sing it.
Maybe you could do a cover, Jared.
People just hum it in their head.
Oh.
Ooh.
Sorry about that, everyone.
Just had an existential crisis.